There is a version of you you haven't met yet. A colder version, a quieter version, a version so disciplined that if you met him today, you might not recognize him. You might even fear him. Because he doesn't negotiate with comfort, he doesn't bargain with excuses, and he never asks for permission. Most people think discipline is a habit. Wake up early, eat clean, work hard. But that is not discipline. That is maintenance. Real discipline is something far darker. It is a war against the weakest parts of yourself. Every man carries two identities, the one he shows the world, and the one that whispers in the dark. The first one wants comfort. It wants approval. It wants to be liked. But the second one, the quiet one, wants power. And power demands something most people refuse to give. Sacrifice. Not the sacrifice of time, not the sacrifice of effort, the sacrifice of the weak self. Niccolo Machiavelli understood a brutal truth. The world does not reward softness. It studies weakness. It waits for hesitation, and then it strikes. That is why discipline is not about motivation. Motivation fades. Emotion fluctuates. Energy disappears. But discipline is execution without negotiation. Most men talk too much. They announce their plans. They post their ambitions. They describe the empire they haven't built yet. And in doing so, they release the pressure before the engine even starts. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote for strategists, not for dreamers, because the most dangerous man in the room is rarely the loudest one. He is the quiet observer, the man who watches, learns, and says nothing. When you become truly disciplined, something changes. People feel it. They can't explain it, but they feel it, because a disciplined man cannot be manipulated. He cannot be delayed, and he certainly cannot be controlled. And that terrifies people, because a man who cannot be conquered by his own mind cannot be conquered by anyone. So the real question is not, do you want success? Everyone says yes. The real question is this: are you willing to destroy the version of yourself that keeps you weak? Because the path we are about to walk is not comfortable. It is silent. It is cold. And it demands absolute control. This is where your transformation begins. There is a habit that destroys more potential than failure ever could. Talking about your plans, talking about your future, talking about the man you are going to become. The average man cannot keep a vision inside his chest. He needs witnesses. He needs applause. He needs someone to say, "That's impressive." But the moment you announce your transformation, something dangerous happens. Your brain believes the work has already begun, and the pressure disappears. Machiavelli understood human nature better than most philosophers. He wrote something every strategist remembers. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. The average man reveals everything: his goals, his struggles, his plans, his fears. He broadcasts his entire life. But the powerful man does the opposite. He disappears. He works in silence. And he lets the results speak for him. Silence is not weakness. Silence is pressure. When you stop explaining yourself, you create a vacuum. People begin to wonder, what is he doing? Why is he so quiet? What changed? Your silence becomes unsettling. Because while they were talking, you were building. While they were posting, you were training. While they were announcing, you were becoming. Attention is cheap. Anyone can get it. All you have to do is talk. But power is expensive. Power requires restraint. Restraint of ego. Restraint of emotion. Restraint of the urge to tell everyone what you are doing. The most dangerous man in the room is the one who knows everything about everyone and reveals nothing about himself. Imagine this. You disappear for 6 months. No announcements. No explanations. No dramatic speeches. Just work. Training. Study. Discipline. You cut the noise. You cut the distractions. You cut the people who only love you when you are weak with them. And then one day you return. But you don't return as the same man. Something about you feels different. Your posture, your eyes, your silence. You no longer need their attention. And that makes people nervous. Because silence is the language of control. So, if you understand this principle, if you are ready to move in silence, type one word below. Ghost. Not for the world, for yourself. There is a myth about disciplined people. People think they feel nothing. No doubt. No boredom. No exhaustion. But that is not true. The disciplined man feels everything. He feels the weight of the morning. He feels the temptation to stay in bed. He feels the whisper that says, just 5 more minutes. The difference is simple. He does not listen. Most men consult their emotions before they act. They ask questions like, do I feel motivated? Do I feel ready? Do I feel inspired? And when the answer is no, they stop. Machiavelli would laugh at this weakness. Because leaders cannot wait for the perfect feeling. They act despite the feeling. Discipline is emotional alchemy. You take the heavy metal of resistance. I don't want to. I am tired. This is pointless. And you transform it into something else. I did it anyway. That transformation changes everything. Because once you learn to move against your emotions, nothing can stop you. Not fear. Not boredom. Not failure. Think about this carefully. If your enemy knows you only fight when you feel strong, he will wait. He will wait until you are tired, until you are sad, until you are discouraged. Then he strikes. But if you are the kind of man who works harder when life becomes harder, you become unpredictable. You become dangerous. You become impossible to defeat. Treat your emotions like weather. Some days it will rain. Some days there will be storms. Some days the sky will collapse on your shoulders. But the mission does not change. You acknowledge the storm. Then you move. You put on your coat. You step outside. And you walk anyway. When your actions no longer depend on how you feel, something powerful happens. You become consistent. And consistency terrifies people. Because a man who acts only when he feels good can be stopped. But a man who acts regardless of emotion is unstoppable. That man is free. Most men fear one thing more than failure: isolation, silence, being alone with their own thoughts. That is why they fill every moment with noise. Music, messages, scrolling, conversation, anything to avoid the truth inside their mind. Because when the noise stops, a voice appears. A quiet voice that says, you are wasting your life. But isolation is not your enemy. Isolation is a laboratory. It is where you meet your real self. Not the version shaped by friends. Not the version approved by society. But the raw version. The one that knows what you are capable of. And what you are afraid of. Most people never meet that version. Because they run the moment silence begins. Machiavelli understood a dangerous truth. A ruler must rely on what is within his control, not on the loyalty of others. not on the approval of crowds, not on luck, but on himself. And the moment you start building true discipline, something strange happens. Your circle begins to change. When you begin to rise, people feel it. Not because they hate you, but because your growth exposes their stagnation. You become a mirror. When you get stronger, they see their weakness. When you become focused, they see their distraction. When you build discipline, they see their excuses. So they will say things like, "You've changed. You're obsessed. You're not fun anymore." And they are right. You have changed. You are obsessed. Because the average life is built on average standards. But mastery requires sacrifice. Sometimes the sacrifice is comfort. Sometimes the sacrifice is people. Here is the paradox. The man who is comfortable alone becomes the man everyone respects. Because he needs nothing. He is not trying to impress. He is not trying to take. He is not trying to belong. He is complete. Isolation does not weaken him. It sharpens him. And when he finally returns to the world, people feel it. They feel the presence of a man who does not need them. Most men are easy to predict. Push them, and they react. Insult them, and they explode. Pressure them, and they collapse. Their emotions are open doors. Anyone can walk in. Anyone can control them. That is why they are weak. Not because they lack strength, but because they lack control. Manipulation is simple. All it requires is a button. Anger, fear, insecurity, jealousy. Once someone knows which button controls you, they own you. They don't need force. They don't need power. They just press the button. And you react exactly the way they expected. But something changes when discipline enters your life. You stop reacting. Someone insults you. You look. You pause. Then you return to your work. No anger. No drama. No performance. And suddenly the script breaks. Because they expected a reaction. And you gave them nothing. This is what terrifies people. The man who does not panic. The man who does not complain. The man who does not explain. When chaos appears, most people lose control. But discipline creates something rare. Stability. And stability in a chaotic world looks like power. Imagine a man who shows up every single day. No excuse. No announcements. No emotional speeches. Just work. Day after day. Year after year. You cannot discourage him. You cannot distract him. You cannot exhaust him. Because his discipline is not a mood. It is his identity. This is the secret Machiavelli understood. It is better to be feared than predictable. Because predictability creates weakness. But consistency creates inevitability. And a man who becomes inevitable cannot be stopped. If this idea changes the way you see discipline, let this perspective travel. Someone else needs to hear it. There is a reason most men fail. It is not intelligence. It is not opportunity. It is not talent. It is standards. The average man sets his standards just high enough to feel good about trying, not high enough to demand victory. He accepts almost disciplined, almost focused, almost committed, and almost is the language of mediocrity. Look around you. You live in the most comfortable era in human history. Food arrives at your door. Entertainment never stops. Pleasure is one click away. Everything is designed to make you soft, to sedate you, to distract you. And in a world engineered for weakness, discipline becomes rebellion. Machiavelli studied empires, Rome, Sparta, great civilizations, and he noticed something. Empires rarely fall because of enemies. They fall because they become soft. Luxury erodes discipline. Comfort destroys strength. And slowly, without noticing, power fades. Time is the only currency you cannot earn back. Every hour spent complaining, every minute spent arguing, every second spent scrolling is stolen from your future. And the disciplined man understands this. He guards his time like a dragon guards gold. Raise your standards high enough, and something strange happens. Competition disappears. Not because you defeated everyone, but because most people quit long before the summit. The air at the top is thin. Few people have the lungs to breathe there. That is why the view is different. When your standards become absolute, your life changes. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop explaining your ambition. You stop lowering your expectations to make others comfortable. And slowly, without announcing it, without explaining it, without asking permission, you become something rare. A man who refuses to live an average life. Every transformation begins with a funeral. Not the funeral of a body, but the funeral of an identity. The man you used to be. The man who hesitated. The man who doubted. The man who waited for motivation. If you want a different future that man cannot survive, most people try to improve themselves, but they keep their old identity. They still see themselves as the same person, the same habits, the same limits, the same fears. That is why change fails. Because discipline is not addition, it is subtraction. You do not add strength, you remove weakness. Nature understands this process. A snake cannot grow without shedding its skin. The old layer must die. It becomes tight, uncomfortable, painful, but necessary. Growth always feels like loss before it feels like power. Your past will try to pull you back. Old habits, old friends, old environments. They will whisper, relax. You deserve a break. Just this once. But Machiavelli understood something brutal. There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed. And the longer you postpone it, the stronger your enemy becomes. Your enemy is your old self. This process is not comfortable. You may lose friends. You may lose relationships. You may be misunderstood by your family. People will say, you've changed. They will say, you're cold now. Maybe you are. But discipline does not ask to be understood. It asks to be executed. One day you will look back and realize something strange. The old version of you is gone. The excuses are gone. The hesitation is gone. The weakness is gone. In its place stands someone you barely recognize. Stronger, colder, focused, and finally in control. Something strange happens after enough discipline. The noise inside your mind begins to fade. The anxiety that used to follow you everywhere starts to disappear. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. Anxiety is the shadow of unpreparedness, and discipline is preparation made permanent. When a man controls himself, people notice. Not consciously, but instinctively. They see it in the way he walks, in the way he speaks less, in the way he never rushes. Self-control radiates something most people cannot imitate: authority. Most people treat life like a playground. They react. They chase pleasure. They run from pain. But the disciplined man sees something different. He sees a chessboard. Every move matters. Every choice creates consequence. And slowly he learns to play the game better than the chaos around him. Freedom is often misunderstood. People think freedom means comfort, safety, belonging. But that is not freedom. That is a cage with soft walls. Real freedom is the ability to rely only on yourself. Look at the wolf on the mountain. He is cold. He is hungry. He walks alone. But he is free. Down in the valley, the sheep are warm. They are fed. They are protected, but they are trapped. The question every man must answer is simple. Do you want comfort or power? Discipline will cost you comfort. It will cost you approval. It will cost you ease. But in return, it gives you something rare: self-command. And the man who commands himself is more powerful than the man who commands armies. Because power over others can be taken, but power over yourself is permanent. There is a moment after enough discipline when life becomes quiet. Not externally. The world is still loud, still chaotic, still full of distractions. But inside your mind, something changes. The noise stops. The endless anxiety that followed you for years begins to fade. Because anxiety comes from one place: knowing you are not prepared. When you are undisciplined, you fear the future. You fear failure. You fear competition. You fear judgment. Because deep down you know you are not ready. But discipline removes that fear. Because every day you are preparing. Every day you are sharpening. Every day you are becoming harder to break. The disciplined man does not fear storms. He expects them. Loss, failure, rejection, chaos. These are not surprises. They are part of the path. And when they arrive, he does not collapse. He adapts. He rebuilds. He continues. Your discipline becomes your fortress. They can take your money. They can take your job. They can take your reputation. They can even take your freedom. But they cannot take your discipline. They cannot take your endurance. They cannot take your ability to rise again. But there is a cost. Discipline creates freedom. But it is a cold freedom, a lonely freedom. You stop needing the approval of the crowd. You stop chasing their validation. You stop explaining your ambition. And slowly, you walk a different road than everyone else. Look down there. The herd is warm. The herd is safe. The herd is comfortable. But the herd is controlled. Up here it is cold. It is dangerous. It is uncertain. But it is free. And every man must eventually decide which life he is willing to live. Most people believe power comes from control over others. Control over money. Control over status. Control over influence. But Machiavelli understood a deeper truth. The greatest power is not ruling a kingdom. It is ruling yourself. Look at the world. People fight for control. Control of markets. Control of politics. Control of attention. But they cannot control their anger, their habits, their impulses, their fear. What kind of ruler cannot even rule his own mind? A man who controls others may be powerful, but a man who controls himself is dangerous. He cannot be bribed. He cannot be manipulated. He cannot be intimidated, because nothing outside him has authority over his decisions. Discipline changes the relationship you have with yourself. You stop asking, "How do I feel?" You start asking, "What must be done?" And slowly your identity shifts. You are no longer a man who hopes. You become a man who executes. This is the final lesson. Discipline is not about motivation. It is not about productivity. It is not about impressing others. It is about freedom. Freedom from weakness. Freedom from chaos. Freedom from the prison of your own mind. If you understand this principle, your life will change. Because the battlefield was never outside. It was always within you. And the moment you conquer that battlefield, everything else becomes easier. If this journey into discipline and psychological power speaks to something inside you, stay close. There are more lessons ahead, and you don't want to miss the next one.